Hello and welcome to Good Game, the show for gamers by gamers. I'm Barjo. Jung, where you at, man? Show's starting. We gotta start. Show must go on. Where's my view? There it is. The random character generator of 1,000 characters. All right, here we go. It's gonna get annoying.
Oh. You're such a noob, Badger.
Somehow I don't think our opinions will be diverse enough.
Whoa!
So, do you like the video games and things?
You don't talk to girls much, do you, Barjo? Well, yes, I do like the video games. And here's why. Mine was a deprived childhood. Well, that's not strictly true. I had everything a kid could want, except video games. I yearned for a Super Mario experience of my own, but there was a strict no video games rule at my home. I begged my parents for a console, Super NES, Sega, anything. That magic console never arrived. They said I should be outside riding a bike, so I did. Over to my neighbour's place and their Mega Drive. But then, the ultimate win. I discovered an RPG world full of hack and slash questing, dragons, elves, gear and guilds. I played as Hex in a text-based MUD that looked to the unsuspecting parent just like my homework. When my habit of swapping sleep for gaming was discovered, I was sent to a professional to cure me of my gaming obsession. So I made a decision. I built my first computer, and I called it Ultra Laser. To make up for my deprived childhood, I've denied myself nothing since then. Well, gaming-wise anyway. Coming up this week, we've been impressed with a recent spate of races, but can the new Forza hold its own on the busy circuit? Kingdom Hearts 358 Days Over 2 fills the gap between the first two PlayStation games.
And we dip into the mailbag to answer more of your questions in Ask Good Game. But first...
Can you guess the game for this week? Well, I'm off to read the news.
Bye. What's your name again?
Good game.
It's Hex. PC gamers are up in arms with the news that Modern Warfare 2 may not support dedicated servers for online play. Instead, it seems that developer Infinity Ward is looking to use a combination of Valve anti-cheat software and local peer-to-peer matchmaking. This system makes it more difficult to pirate the game, but will also impact on online favourites such as clan matches and user-created mods. Infinity Ward says these changes have been made to improve the online experience for all players, not just the vocal hardcore community. Dennis Ince, an 11-year-old boy from Missouri, has conducted a study looking at the effects of gaming on wrist and finger pain. Working with his dad, a rheumatologist, Dennis had 171 of his schoolmates fill out a questionnaire that looked at their gaming habits and any physical side effects they might have experienced. According to the results, each additional hour of playtime increased the likelihood of wrist pain in 50% of the study's participants, with younger children particularly affected. The researchers think this is because younger children's muscles and tendons are still developing and suggest that parents restrict playtime. Sad times for the Australian gaming industry as Transmission Games, one of the country's oldest studios, enter receivership, making all staff redundant in the process. The studio is probably best known in recent times for Ashes 2009 and Heroes Over Europe, but it's produced a wide range of games in its time, including Lucinda Green's Equestrian Challenge and Gaelic Hurling.
There's the red light, he's out.
The first signs of trouble appeared at the end of September, when the studio laid off a third of its staff. With 30 members down, the 70-strong team vowed to continue, but it seems the panic created by this move cost the studio some high-profile development deals, making the situation untenable.
Good game.
Reverse the polarities or inverse the polarities? I think I reverse the polarity.
Ready?
Yeah.
The original Kingdom Hearts games have become classics of the PlayStation 2 era. Role-playing games set in a kind of Disney Final Fantasy fusion universe. They offer a complex storyline and an innovative fighting style that has won the game fans from both Japan and the West.
Following the trend set from games like God of War on PSP, the latest edition, Kingdom Hearts 358 Days Over 2, is an adjunct to the story and fills the gaps in the story between the PS2 games. This version is on the Nintendo DS.
You play as Roxas, who is really just Sora, the hero from the previous games with amnesia and a spiffy black robe. And of course, you have the trademark Keyblade to fend off nasties with, as you set out on missions to be completed for the mysterious Organisation 13. As the wielder of the Keyblade, you're one of the few members of the organisation who can collect hearts from the heartless. Not quite sure how you can collect hearts from people who don't have them, but anyway, you do this with the hope of restoring the hearts of yourself and your friends.
Now, at this point, we should declare that we're Kingdom Hearts noobs.
Yeah, the story didn't make much sense to us, and the game does little to help you out, but with some internet research, we ploughed on. And on. It is a long game, isn't it, Badge?
Yeah, but you know, it's one of the most visually impressive games we've seen on the DS. You can tell the designers didn't want to scale it down just because it's on a smaller console.
Yeah, it does work on the DS though, doesn't it, Badge? I mean, you don't use the stylus for it much at all, but to be honest, I was kind of grateful for that. I find when it comes to combat in DS games, the stylus just gets kind of fiddly and annoying.
Yeah, keeping it button-based here was a good move, and plus you can string together cool combo attacks with magic and specifically target an enemy's weakness.
Definitely, and this is actually where I had the most fun, Badge. Weapon abilities, magical items and spells all come in the form of panels, which you need to link together in a kind of puzzle to make the most of your attack power.
I found this customizable approach, though, it didn't really help me much when all the enemies were just so repetitive. I felt like it was just the same guys over and over again, and I got bored of it pretty quickly. Even run-ins with well-known Disney characters just seemed to be the same conversations again and again, rephrasing ways for you to do the same kind of mission.
Yeah, I mean, there are really only a few worlds for you to visit, and once you got to know these areas, killing Heartless in the same Disney environments that you'd had memorised pretty much from the beginning got old really quickly. For such a long game, this really hurts the gamer experience.
Yeah, even the cutscenes are repetitive.
I know! I mean, how many times can you sit and watch the same dudes eat ice cream?
Well, it's certainly stylish, but the story just progresses way too slowly, and the repetitive fights really just didn't keep me interested. I think if you are a Kingdom Hearts fan, this will be something to tide you over at least until Kingdom Hearts 3 comes out. I'm giving it 7 out of 10 rubber chickens.
Yeah, I was disappointed that there were so few worlds to visit, but the puzzle aspects of the missions were quite challenging, and I did find myself getting drawn into the story a little bit. I just felt like if I'd played the previous games, I would have really enjoyed this a lot more. It's definitely one for the fans. I'm giving it 7.5 rubber chickens.
Good game.
Alrighty, let's give this Ask Me stuff thing a go. Bajo, what are you doing?
Eating sandwich.
What, now? Alrighty. First up, we have Nick from Launceston.
With the banning of Left 4 Dead 2, I gotta know, when's that R18 discussion paper going to be coming out? Will it ever come out?
Ah yes, that elusive R18 discussion paper was originally set a deadline of July 31st this year by Bob Debus, the previous Minister for Home Affairs.
But then there was a cabinet reshuffle in June and Bob was replaced by Brendan O'Connor, which meant that the deadline no longer applied.
We contacted Mr. O'Connor's office with your question, but sadly he was unavailable for comment at the time.
Luckily for us, though, he gave an interview with GameSpot AU recently and they asked him the same question. And he said,
"The content of the discussion paper and the timing of its release are under consideration by the Australian government."
Well, that doesn't tell us much, does it, Badge? Anyway, he's hoping that discussion paper sees the light of day sometime soon.
All right, next is Darcy from Melbourne.
How do you reach the skull in the Halo 3 Mythic Map sandbox? Because every time I try, I keep dying. I just want the 25 gamer points. What should I do?
Hex, disco ball. Now, let's take a look through the disco ball of 1,000 walkthroughs.
Step 1, load sandbox in Forge mode.
Step 2, create a bubble shield and ascend a teleporter node.
Step 3, figure out where the skull is. A good point of reference to find it is the setting sun, which you want to keep between the towers to your left. From there, the skull will be in between the two towers in front of you.
Step 4, create a receiver node and fly with it as fast as you can to where the skull is, moving up and down as you go to dodge the turret fire.
Step 5, drop the receiver node as close to the skull as possible. At this point, you'll probably be killed by one of those guardian jerks.
Step 6, respawn and get the bubble shield and walk through the teleporter. You have to be quick and deploy your bubble shield the instant you walk through, or else you'll die.
Step 7, pick up the skull. Achievement unlocked.
There's plenty of other ways you could get creative to get this skull, but we just found this one the easiest.
Okay, next up. Ooh, this one's from Jacob in Gorokan in New South Wales.
Dear Barjo, fail! In your ODST review, you said you only found one shotgun whilst going through the campaign. I've found 3 already.
Sigh, I know you just picked that one to make me look stupid.
Yep. I mean, what were you noobs doing? I found heaps of shotguns.
Fine, but for the record, there were shotgun ninjas in my party, and I was drinking the new shotgun.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway, that's it for this week. If you've got a question you want to ask Good Game, go here and ask away. Carrot on my face!
Good game.
Video games are all about rules. While there are plenty of rules that control how games are played, there are surprisingly few rules that determine how games should be made. Veteran game developer Noah Falstein is changing that by laying out a list of 400 rules to design games by.
Game design is really the process of not just thinking up what a game is about, but going through all the details and laying out everything from the practical details of what sort of artwork and coding needs to be done to more esoteric things like the psychology of the player. And rules are simply a way of making that process a little easier, rather than saying you can do anything you like, which is true to an extent, but the fact is experience has shown that 99 out of 100 things just aren't that much fun. So rules are a way of giving you some guidance to finding that 1% a little bit more effectively than just trial and error. The 400 project came about from Hal Barwood, my friend and colleague, who really put that together almost on a whim as a talk at the Game Developers Conference. The whole idea for this list was to go to the designers themselves and collect a lot of these things. And one of the things that we found to be quite gratifyingly consistent is that we know that it's a good rule when everybody says, oh yeah, of course, wow, I never thought of it that way, but of course that'll work.
The list of rules wasn't just created by game designers though. There's even a rule from Albert Einstein in there.
Yeah, the Albert Einstein rule is actually my favorite of all that we have so far, and it's everything should be as simple as possible, but no simpler. And I still don't even quite know what that was referring to, but it's a wonderful rule for game design. There are quite a few rules like that. Another one of my favorites is to provide clear short-term goals for a player. And I don't care what the interface is or what sort of detail you have, that's always going to be something that's going to be hard and fast and reliable. Some of the rules, certainly if you get very specific, they can be superseded. But we'll come up with new rules that, for example, any game that involves gestures should not involve holding your arm up for periods of more than 5 minutes at a time. Those are some of examples of new rules that we may come up with and why there's really an infinite number possible.
Noah isn't alone in his rule-making quest. He's being joined by some of the world's most talented game designers, including at least one Australian.
I first became aware of the 400 project when Noah Falstein came to the Australian Game Developers Conference, I think maybe 3 or 4 years ago. The rule that I contributed to the 400 project was trim the fat, which I need to actually let Noah know has been updated. It was pointed out to me that the in trim the fat was in fact fat. So the rule is now in fact trim fat. And it relates to the idea of removing things from the design in order to make the rest of the design stronger. So I wrote the rule trim the fat on very large paper in very large letters and stuck it on my wall, and it's been there ever since. So whenever I get carried away, I remind myself that if something can be removed, it probably should be removed. I think having a list of game design rules available to you, for one thing, provides a great resource for beginning game designers to draw on, but also for those of us who've been doing it for a little while, it means that we're sort of able to stack our knowledge up on top of one another's. And as Sir Isaac Newton said, if I've seen further, it's by standing on the shoulders of giants. And I think a list like the 400 project allows us to really stand on the shoulders of some of the greatest designers of all time.
Rules are okay, but not everyone thinks that game design needs 400 of them. Dan Toos from Australia's Creative Assembly is one of those people.
The first thought in my mind when I heard of the 400 project was they're going to be hard-pressed to come up with 400 rules. No one's even going to be able to keep track of 400 rules, and if you had to keep turning back to the rule book to check everything you did, you'd probably go insane. Thus far, I think the vast majority of the rules in there are very good guidelines. And I'd say guidelines is a key word rather than rules, because I'm a little bit down on having too many rules. But most of the guidelines work. There are a couple which I think should really come with big warning tags. So I could give you an example there. One of the rules was, I think, always let the player be able to turn the game off and to sort of save. I would say that that's not necessarily a cool thing, because if the player can save everywhere, then that means they can feel that they can just continue again if they fail all the time, and there's no sense of accomplishment or achievement. The big advantage of not really having rules and making everything up as you go along when you're making games is that you're far more likely to stumble across cool, innovative, new sort of stuff that people haven't experienced or seen before.
So, rules or no rules? Because games are a creative medium, there's no right or wrong answer. But is it possible that once the 400 project is complete, it could become a Bible for game developers all around the world?
Actually, I hope not. As I say, I think there are many different approaches to these things, and I like the idea that I can come up with one way of doing this and someone else can come up with a completely different way. And of course, you can always, bend the rules, break the rules, think of them maybe as guidelines. I think that's a better way, but it gives you at least a heads up on, starting from scratch.
Good game.
The current generation of consoles are old enough now to start seeing that second cycle of games coming through, and racers in particular are showing us some really interesting and amazing things. Forza 3 is next off the grid. There's no fancy pants visuals here. This is a clean-cut, pure racing sim, and it's Microsoft's answer to Gran Turismo.
As you progress through your career, you'll unlock different vehicle classes, and you'll be able to purchase from a huge list as well. But you'll also just be given brand spanking new shiny beasts simply from impressing the manufacturers. There's hundreds of cars to choose from SUVs to supercars. And what I really loved about this badge is that you really feel the weight of those cars when you push the corners, or the loss of control when you get nudged from behind. For the hardcore nuts, there's plenty of tuning options, and you can pretty much test drive and custom race every single vehicle in the game. So there's no slow unlocking or putting up with crappy cars before you can take a high-end machine for a spin.
Was new, and there's also real-time tire degeneration, and you can monitor everything that's going on in your car with all of these screens. And I'm not going to lie to you, Hex, I have no idea what most of these mean, but for the rev heads, they're absolutely going to love it. Also, all the decals are unlocked right from the start, and you can just have so many different layers to your car, so anyone who's into being creative will just have a ball with that. It inspired us to make the Moo Machine, the Pinkmobile, and some friendly in-game banter. And if you think you've made something pretty cool, why not put it on the auction house?
You can also upload and edit videos on the Forza website, and though we haven't tested this out, it's going to be really great for the machinima enthusiasts.
I found the all-wheel drive and front-wheel drive cars really easy to handle and a lot of fun, but some of those rear-wheel drives, with a few exceptions like the Camaro, it's just like strapping rockets to a skateboard.
Yeah, you really don't want to turn and accelerate at the same time with them, or it's Spinsville.
We've noticed lately that racers are really starting to fiddle with the controls more, so you really need to find that sweet spot and just move the stick slightly when you're taking those long turns and just gently hold the accelerator halfway down and just tap it.
Yeah, and if you're not a fan of delicate racing, then you have auto braking, driving lines, and tons of other auto assist options to help. The driving line has an extra setting here too to only show the red and yellow braking line, which is much less visually intrusive.
These settings act like gambling options too, so you can really adjust it to your style of play, and it rewards you for doing that instead of just easy being easier. I really liked how the damage notification slides in on the right side every time you make a bump or knock. It's kind of like it's saying, hey, you realise you're stuffing up your car, right?
We recommend turning simulation on for car damage because we never really wrecked our vehicle beyond repair. It's a little bit hard to do when you can turn back time. The damage looks all right, and it definitely affects your vehicle in different ways if you let it ride. Yeah, I like this rewind feature badge. I mean, I know we've seen it in other games before, but here it's done really well.
Yeah, it's a lot faster here, especially if you install the game to your hard drive, but I've never really liked rewind that much because it is an I win button, but it does teach you how to take those tough corners. You know, you can practice them again and again. And you'll be clawing for it if you screw up just before you cross the finish line, or if you do a handbrakey over the finish line when you still have a whole nother lap to go.
Now, Badge, let's talk about the AI for a second, because unlike other recent races, these cars actually know you're on the track. It's only very rarely that they'll do something weird or spin out after a rewind. Tactical blocking is as important as getting around the track quickly. You are really gonna love being a bastard in this game.
Your reverse cam in most games is usually just one angle or requires a bit of readjusting, but with this you just angle the right stick back at a particular angle and you'll see that perspective view. Brilliant. And I could really tell that my driving was making the other drivers nervous, you know, and that's quite an achievement. There's a new pressure AI system here, which means if you stress out the cars around you, they'll screw up more, especially on the easier difficulty setting. But there's one thing these other drivers don't know. We not only like destruction, we encourage it.
The tight turns of Italy will really test your inside lane skills as you struggle to get out of third gear. But there's also a lot of wide open tracks that'll be really fun for you to get going as the crowd cheer you on. There's lots of real-world tracks and plenty of fake tracks set in real-world locations, and there's heaps to choose from.
Overall, I quite like the presentation of the game Hex. The voiceover guy is just so polite.
Excellent work. You've finished your first race. Now, on to the next.
There's a decent selection of HUD options, and the cockpit view is actually playable with plenty of room to see. And with the exception of the music, the sound design is really incredible. Forza 3 allows newcomers a playing experience with strength and depth under the hood, and assuming the online is lag and wobble car free, I'm going to give it a 9.5 badge. Plus split screen, yay!
Yes, split screen. It's something that gets omitted from so many next-gen races, and it is limited, but it is here. I thought, you know, nothing could top Need for Speed Shift. I had so much fun with that game and all of its visual effects, but I really grew to love this racer more. It's clean, it's pure, and it's hardcore. I'm giving it 9.5 out of 10 rubber chickens.
So gamers, did you recognise the pile of pixels this week?
It was Ninja Hamster for Commodore 64 and Spectrum. It was a fighting game from the late 80s.
Furry Fists of Fury, and they're not the only rodents to make it into a video game. Next week we look at G-Force. Yes, it's a movie tie-in game, but no, for once it isn't balls face.
Guinea pig combat rolls. We previewed Borderlands a few weeks ago, and now the full game is here. We see if it lives up to its promise.
Plus, the Ruffle Cup returns, and it's Pages versus Pixels when Aussie author Matthew Riley competes for gaming glory.
So Hex, want to come back and have fun with the video games next week?
You bet.
Okay then. Well, Junglers, thanks for all the great times here in the Den of Gaming, and he's alive and well, by the way, folks, just taken on a behind-the-scenes role on the show. And Hex, a very big warm welcome to the Good Game family.
Thanks very much. And don't forget, you can watch this or any other episode of Good Game on our website. There's also our look at the latest Pro Evo. And do drop by our forums and leave us a post or two. Should I put up the flame shields now, Barjo?
Oh, no, go on then, can't hurt. Till next week, gamers, Barjo out.
Hex out.
So you want to have a game or something?
Damn straight.
All right, but you do know I'm Batman, right?